Let's be heard. Good afternoon, everyone. The telephone lines are open. The number to call in New York is 563 WABC. If you're calling from New Jersey, 201-489 WABC. In a program dedicated to the free and open exchange of ideas and of opinions, in the belief that as American citizens, you have a right to hear and to be heard. And what is on your mind this afternoon, huh? Well, there's no end. It never stops. From virtually every pore of our nation is a constant barrage of racial obsession. There's never enough. It's never enough. You have a report coming out on the major leagues, organized baseball. They don't have enough blacks in this. They don't have enough blacks in that. And then you get this study, which, of course, Consumer Affairs Commissioner Mark Green absolutely loves. He probably had a few orgasms when he read this. Blacks are severely underrepresented in magazine ads and mail-order catalogs. Did you know that? And when they are shown, it is often as children or menial workers, according to a study that was released just officially a little while ago. I want to quote this absurd statement from Mark Green. This racial neglect is both economically dumb and morally offensive, since minorities control $400 billion in consumer spending, and studies show no white backlash if minorities appear in ads. Now, here's a guy who would tell you how underprivileged they are, how bereft of finances they are, how poverty-stricken they are, and yet he talks about $400 billion in consumer spending? Well, the Consumer Affairs Department looked at 11,391 ads in 27 national magazines. Is that what they're paid for, to look at ads? It randomly chose 9 issues of each magazine published between July 1988 and July 1991. It found that 674, or 3.15% of the 21,607 magazine models were black, although 11% of all magazine readers are black. Fewer than 1%, or 195 of the models, were Asian. I mean, this is so sick. This is what's tearing our country apart. This is why we're headed for third worldism. This is absurd. You pay people with taxpayer dollars to sit around and look at magazines and count black faces. And then Green said, when blacks do appear in magazine ads, they're commonly placed as tokens in groups with whites. Well, what are they supposed to be? See, here's the same scumball who hollered about integration, and the same scumball who years ago said there should be total integration, there should be no differential. And so now he's complaining because there's a black face with a couple of white faces. Which is it, Mark? You nerd. The department also surveyed 157 catalogs from 56 mail-order companies, finding that 4.6% of the 22,685 models were black. In most catalogs, Asians comprised fewer than 1% of the models, Green said. He said treating minorities as invisible people promotes comfortable ignorance. No wonder David Dinkins appointed him as Consumer Affairs Commissioner. Green said, he said, such visual belittling, it's a visual belittling, is of no small consequence. What we see affects how we think. After all, if blacks in TV ads comprise 7.5% of all models, they can't print ads do at least as well? So now we know why we pay Mark Green, to test his ability to discern color configurations in ads. And by the way, speaking of color, you heard Harley's report. It is a bias attack. The 3 thugs hitting the white guy, but there's no big demonstration. No Al Sharpton, or even a white Al Sharpton, carrying on. Of course not. But there are a lot of attacks that go on that aren't even listed as bias attacks. simply because the perpetrator is black and the victim is white, but if it were the other way around. For example, police believe a bat-wielding mugger who critically injured a young Brooklyn woman Sunday evening had attacked a 56-year-old man just an hour earlier, breaking his arm. Deirdre Duffy, she's 28. She remained in critical condition at Long Island College Hospital yesterday. She was struck on the head Sunday evening as she passed through the Warren Street exit of the Bergen Street subway station. Witnesses, including a good Samaritan who tried to chase down the thug, described him as a 200-pound black man between 16 and 20 years old, wearing a blue and white Yankee T-shirt with the number 22 on it. No, it wasn't Stump Merrill. At about 5:15 p.m., another Brooklyn resident, Max Evans, was approached by a man fitting the same description at the subway station on 7th and Flatbush Avenue. When I saw he was nervous, I naturally tried to move away. He would have hit me in the head, I guess, if I hadn't put up my arm. But that's when he hit me in the arm and broke my arm. In both cases, the mugger escaped with no money. And there's more to the story, but no point in telling you that this girl is described, the one in critical condition, as a very nice girl, a very lovely girl, and so forth. No point in that. But at any rate, it goes on and on. Here it is, 1991. Did you know that in 1791 we created, or our forefathers, you should pardon the expression, created the Bill of Rights? That's why this is the Bill of Rights bicentennial. But maybe we shouldn't call it a bicentennial. Maybe we should call it a requiem for the Bill of Rights. Let's see how some of the rights of the original 10 amendments. Did you know the original 10 amendments are called the Bill of Rights? Anyway, the original 10 amendments have been surreptitiously repealed. The 10th Amendment guarantees, let me quote now directly from the Bill of Rights. Let me quote. Powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. End of quote. Yeah, it's pretty plain language. So you tell me how the federal government can constitutionally mandate speed limits, control public schools, and waste disposal sites, and make hundreds of other edicts. Better yet, try to think of something you or your state can do free from federal mandates. Go ahead, try. Now, the 9th Amendment provides, and again, let me quote, the enumeration of the Constitution, in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. End of quote. I don't know if you know this or not, but the 9th Amendment was written to overcome Alexander Hamilton's objections to having a Bill of Rights in the first place. Alexander Hamilton asked, why declare that things shall not be done by the federal government, which there is no power to do? And you know what? That made sense. It still does. Hamilton was simply asking, why should we have a measure saying that the government cannot restrict the press when it has no authorization to do so in the first place? Hamilton's concern was, since it is impossible to enumerate all liberties, such as economic liberty, politicians and judges would rule that they were not protected rights. The courts have made a mockery of the 9th Amendment. We do retain a few protections of the 5th Amendment, but they are disappearing. Among its protections is, and I quote, a person cannot be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. Well, try this. Ask your Internal Revenue Service agent whether the information on your tax form can be used against you in criminal proceedings, and then ask whether you are constitutionally required to give that information. 5th Amendment provisions explain why we have the charade of voluntary tax compliance. That way, when you appear in tax court and ask that your tax form be inadmissible as evidence under the 5th Amendment, the judge will say, sorry, You voluntarily gave the information. The Fifth Amendment also provides, and I want to quote again, if I may, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Ha! Not only has the court made a mockery of that provision, it permits, as in a Hawaii case, taking of private property for private use. It denies some owners of private property the right to raise it and build another building. It denies landowners the right to chop down trees on their own land. And the Second Amendment guarantees the right of the people to keep and bear arms. The Second Amendment is not a deer hunting or duck hunting amendment. It affords us some protection against the wannabe tyrants. That's what some people believe. Well, the people leading the attack on the Second Amendment are the very people who want to control greater portions of our lives and restrict our freedoms. And therefore, part of their agenda is to first disarm us. I don't know about you, but whenever you hear that the government has taken weapons, you'll know. Any bicentennial celebration of our Bill of Rights is almost a hoax. Almost, because we still have freedoms envied by most of the world, but they are under siege. Maybe we should have a rally, like a rally for full restoration of our Bill of Rights. By the way, speaking of organizations, how about I want to doff the fedora to Jack Gargan, founder of Throw the Hypocritical Rascals Out. That's THRO, Throw. He wants to focus public anger on members of Congress who vote themselves big fat pay raises and grow rich while in office. Yeah, throw. But you people don't throw. You keep re-electing these bums. So why should they worry?
Good afternoon, Bob. And once again, right on target on your opening monologue, point after point, you hit hard at the salient features of the lunacy the inmates have taken over the asylum. How ironic that I didn't mean to dwell on Mark Green, but since you brought him up, that Mark Green, who was appointed by the in-lieu mayor, whom I've dubbed the Hottentot potentate, has the Consumer Affairs Commissioner, who seems to be in competition with Mr. Kessel. He's obsessed with insipid quotas. But even more ironic is Miss Holtzman, who's the elected city controller, who seems to be obsessed with feminist and gay issues, taking priority over her fiscal responsibilities. But the main thrust of my call was to remind the voters, to remind the electorate, and to remind your listeners. I don't have to remind you because you're well informed and abreast of all the current affairs, is simply that during the Democratic primary, the three white opponents of Mr. Dinkins, Mr. Koch, Mr. Ravitch, and Mr. Golden, if memory serves me correctly, held a backdoor meeting, closed-door meeting, came out, and then jointly announced to the press back in the summer of '89 that they would, and it was reported in the New York Times, they would not attack Mr. Dinkins on his record or on the issues for fear of the black backlash, which ironically they did not get the black vote anyway, by pandering to Mr. Dinkins.
Well, they didn't use the phrase black backlash. They did say they did not want to appear racist.
Yes.
So in other words, they just proved what I've been saying for a long time, that if you do hold a black up to the same standard you would a white, then you're called racist. In other words, first of all, come on, what are we talking about here? If David Dinkins were white, he never would have been mayor in the first place. Absolutely. Because years ago, when it was revealed that he hadn't filed income tax for 4 years, when Nick Scopetta went to Abe Beam, I remember it was back in 1974, or 1974, Abe Beam was the mayor. He had just been elected in the fall of '73. Right. And he had appointed David Dinkins to be a deputy mayor. Nick Scopetta, the commissioner of investigations, said, I'm sorry to tell you this, Mr. Mayor, but here's the record on David Dinkins. He hasn't filed his income tax in 4 years. And that was the end of David Dinkins. That's how he became city clerk. He couldn't become appointed as deputy mayor, but he could be made city clerk. Now, back in those days, people said, well, that's the end of of David Dinkins' career. But they forgot David Dinkins had the protective melanin,
Oh, absolutely.
which is better than Teflon any day.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Okay, sir.
Hello, Jess. You're on WABC.
Hi, Mr. Grant. It's Jeff, Jeff. I'm sorry, I guess I didn't pronounce it correctly on the phone.
You didn't pronounce what?
My
Jess?
name?
Oh,
My name?
Jess? Yeah.
Jeff.
Oh, Jeff.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Okay.
No problem. I mean, you have enough things to worry about, right? Anyway, I need some advice if you can possibly help me, and then I have two brief questions. I'm 18 years old, and I plan in the future to have...
Could you speak up, Jeff?
Yes, sir, I'm sorry. I plan to get married and have children. I was wondering, what you think if I had a boy of Lumumbo Campanella? What do you think?
If you Lumumba Campanella, why is that your last name, Campanella?
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh.
But I just thought that name, it struck me funny. I mean,
Lumumba. Well, there was Patrice Lumumba, who was a revolutionary black in the Congo, I believe it was, back in the 60s.
So I guess the name's pretty popular, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
How about Kenya or Odessa? There's a nice man's name, Odessa.
Oh, well.
I guess people who named their son Odessa came from Russia. But these crazy names, they get more wild all the time. And if you have a daughter, how about Sharika or Shananwinananaka?
Well, I don't know. I'm hoping just to have boys, but because I don't want them to grow up to be feminists. So anyway.
You sure you want to have a son? If he's a white male, forget it. By that time, they'll probably pass a law that every white male child born has got to be done away with.
Oh, no. Okay, I'll get to my questions now. Recently, I'm sure you heard about Tony Brown and his conversion.
Yeah, and I want to congratulate Tony Brown for announcing he is registering in the Republican Party.
Yes, I thought that was great. Well, obviously, one of my questions was, do you think it's true blue? Obviously, I take it that you do. My other question was, has he taken a stand yet on the Clarence Thomas nomination that you know of?
I don't believe he's taken a stand, but I'll bet you anything that he will endorse the candidacy or he will approve the candidacy. He sure as heck is not going to oppose the candidacy.
Thank God he finally realized that these lefty liberals are not out to help the little man. They're only out to fill their pockets with our tax money.
Good luck, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay. Who didn't know he was shark bait when he was surfing off Santa Cruz? Eric Larson, a former computer software engineer from San Jose, California. And indeed, he is a real person, and I hope he has his real left leg still with him, although he had that leg chewed up by a shark which experts believe was what is known as a great white, the same shark that Richard Dreyfuss discovered in Jaws. Eric, is it true you almost were devoured by a great white shark?
Yep, sure enough. Yeah, in addition to my leg, he got both my arms too. So, yeah, it was pretty intense.
How long ago did this happen, Eric?
About 3 weeks. It was on the 1st of July.
Do you have any nightmares about it?
No, I really haven't. I've been sleeping pretty well.
Okay, let's find out how it happened. You were surfing off of Santa Cruz. That's off the coast of California, of course.
Yeah, it's about 50 miles south of San Francisco. And, I was just sitting there on my board waiting for a wave, and I became aware of the presence of a very large animal in the water with me. I didn't know quite what it was, and kind of came up right between my legs and lifted up my board. And I was hoping for a while that it was an elephant seal, but then I looked down and saw the jaws and the gums and the teeth clamped around my leg, and at that point I became aware that it was a shark. And so I reached down to try and pry him off with my arms, because that was the only thing I could think of. And he opened up for another bite, and I got my leg out, but he got both my arms in right up about to the elbows on both of them. And I managed to wiggle my right arm out after a few seconds, and and I gave him a thump on his belly with the right arm. And at that point, he released the left arm and took off. But he snagged my leash. You know, I had my surfboard attached to my right leg by a leash, and he seemed to be tangled in it. So he pulled me underwater for a little bit, about, I don't know, 2 or 3 seconds. He pulled me about, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet underwater. But it was pretty powerful. And then I got up to the surface and got a breath, and got on my board and started paddling in.
Were you aware how badly you were bleeding at that point?
Oh yeah, when I was paddling in, I could look down and see some blood trails coming off my arms. You know, and I got kind of concerned about at this point, you know, because the blood in the water is kind of a bad situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I figured I just knew I had to paddle in, and I knew I had to be pretty methodical about it and not make any mistakes. I happened to pick up a wave about the last 50 yards. A nice wave came by, and I was able to catch it, drop in on it on my chest, and it took me right to the beach.
Okay, as soon as you got to the beach, you remember what happened?
Oh, yeah. I was all by myself out there surfing, and when I got to the beach, there was nobody on the beach either.
Oh, boy.
So at this point, I pulled my board up and took a quick look at the board, and then I thought, well, I better worry about this later, and I kind of sat down for a while because I was real low on blood.
Were you couldn't really stand on that mangled left foot, could you?
Oh yeah.
You were able to stand on it.
Yeah, it was just the muscles were ripped up. I was lucky that the tears were parallel with the muscles, so the muscles were torn, but they were still essentially functional. And I managed. I knew I had to get to where someone could see me, or if I just sat there, I'd
You would bleed to death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I could see blood spurting out of my arm, so I clamped it with my right arm. I clamped my left arm with my right hand to stop the bleeding, and then I got up, and I knew I had to hike a couple 100 yards. And
oh, boy.
Which was hard, because, I was about to pass out, but I had to sit down a couple of times. But I eventually made it. I got close to a house, and a young guy came out named Ben Burdett, and he called 911 for me, and a real crack team of ace medical guys showed up almost right away, and about 45 minutes after they called me, I was in an Army helicopter being evacuated out, and I landed in the Dominican Santa Cruz hospital here, and just happened to fall into the care of a couple of real ace doctors, one of whom had actually treated shark injuries before. And so I was extremely fortunate. A guy named Dr. Tomlinson and another doctor named Dr. Kubiachi, who were both just incredible. My left arm is completely functional now, and the right arm is going to work fine. My right hand's a little stiff, but it's getting there. And I'm limping around. I'm charging up and down the stairs, but I got to keep my left leg immobilized. But, so yeah, I feel like I'm recovering pretty well here.
You sound almost nonchalant about all this, but you were in surgery for at least 5 hours.
Yeah.
And one of the David Briggs, one of the volunteer firefighters who arrived first, said that your right forearm had a 4-inch diameter bite clear out of it. Your left leg was in shreds. It was basically taco meat. That's what he said.
Yeah, it didn't look too good. I had a real good wetsuit on, which kind of held all the tissues together. I was wearing an O'Neill wetsuit that held everything together, sort of, and kind of slowed the bleeding up a little bit.
Well, I wanted to ask you about the wetsuit. Had it not been for the wetsuit, maybe you wouldn't have survived.
Oh, I think it was definitely a very important factor.
Yeah.
It gave me a little extra buoyancy, so I was able to get up to the surface, and the warmth factor was there, and certainly it just kind of held everything together for me. I've still got it. It's got some real nice little triangular bites in it.
Well, according to the doctor, or at least one of the surgeons, aside from scarring and possible impaired mobility in your right hand, you should be just fine.
Yeah, I expect to be 100%. I have a little trouble lifting my right thumb, but that's it's not like I'm a professional piano player.
Well, I tell you one thing, you certainly have a great sense of humor, Eric.
Well, I tried to maintain a kind of a positive attitude about it. All the nurses and everything in the hospital were really good to me, and all the doctors, all my surfing buddies have given me a lot of encouragement, and all my, I paddle outriggers, and all my team and my coach have given me incredible encouragement. So I feel it's pretty easy, with all these people rooting for me. And
well, certainly, Eric, and your story has captured the attention of a lot of people all over the country. One final question, Eric, and
sure.
Probably a lot of people are thinking of this question themselves.
Mm-hmm.
When you're fully recovered,
yep,
are you going to go surfing again?
Yeah, everybody asks me that, and
somebody's at the door.
Yeah, they can wait. But yeah, I basically hope to get back out there. I'll go out, and if I'm too nervous, I'll come back in.
Okay.
No, but yeah, I want to go back. It's real important to me.
Well, God bless you, Eric. We congratulate you on your recovery, and we appreciate you coming to the telephone and talking to us. You're out there on the West Coast. I understand you're getting some of our heat out there.
Oh, it's real nice. I was out on my deck catching a few rays right before you called. So, well, I got to go answer the door.
Okay. Tell them we said hello.
Bet.
Okay, Eric.
Catch you later.
Eric Larson, former computer software engineer from San Jose, California. And you heard from his own lips what it was like to almost be dinner for a man-eating shark. Field in New Jersey.
Bob Grant. Danny Savino sends his warmest regards from Philadelphia. He's a mutual friend of ours.
Well, I'm glad Dan didn't forget me, Jim.
How do you guys connect, Bob?
Well, I was doing a program down at WWDB, and Dan called me, and the rest is history.
I'll tell you, he is one heck of a guy, but that's, I know you don't like this, but this is not the reason I called. This was just kind of
that's all right. Dan Savino is one of the finest, most honorable gentlemen I've ever met.
And that goes double for me because I met him one night. One night we were at Trump's Plaza, and we just happened to be sitting close to the table, and we started talking, and the guy... I thought he was my grandfather. Unbelievable. Then he mentioned your name and so on and so forth, and we've become friends ever since. But that's not the reason I'm calling.
Jim, what really annoys me perhaps more than anything else, and I've been around long enough to be able to make this statement, I have known and do know, I'm sorry to say, so many people who talk big, so many people who are well-connected, who know this guy, who know that guy, who if you need this, just give them a call.
Right.
And then when you take them seriously, when you take them at their word, and it's too bad the guy I'm thinking about isn't listening right now, because I had an incident last night where a guy who was, for years and years, he's been telling me how well connected he is with the big wheels of a major, not a major, but a broadcasting firm.
He has juice, you mean?
And how well connected, how much they love him. And the guy last night proved that he's a fake, a phony, a fraud, a big windbag. Jim, why did you call?
I'll tell you. Let me touch on one other thing. That reminds me of exactly how they do it in Atlantic City. Every time you see those pit bosses and those guys, they say, hey, can I do anything for you? Can I do anything for you? And by the time you want them to do something, they've turned around and walked away. And then when you really want them to do something, they don't know you. So I know what you're talking about with Danny. And Danny is aces. I'll tell you why I was calling. The Senators squeezed that pay raise through kind of...
They snuck it through at 10 minutes to 10. They attached it to another piece of legislation.
Right. Here's a suggestion, and it's a thought, and maybe you've already thought of it, so I'm late on it. I think you mentioned a couple of the guys, Lautenberg and the other guy, Bradley, voted against it.
Yep.
Okay. Wouldn't it be advantageous to you? Now, I know, unfortunately, you're not national, so it's not going to get across the country, but...
Well, you really know how to hurt a guy. That's the bane. That is like a rock stuck in my shoe that I'm not national.
You should be.
Well, I will be, damn it.
Okay. The point of the matter is this. Don't you think it would be wise to announce those guys who not only voted for it, and then announce the guys who didn't vote for it but are accepting it? You know what I'm saying? I think, unfortunately, on talk show radios, there's so many issues that we get serious one day, we breeze over them, but...
well, so far we don't know who's accepting it,
You think it would be a good idea, though, Bob?
Well, what will it prove? What will it prove? Listen, people know that Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who is a pompous hypocrite, voted for it. But I guarantee you the next time he runs for re-election, he'll get re-elected. I think he ran in 88.
Well, I'll tell you something. I
And
agree.
that means he's due to come up for re-election in 94. Nobody will remember that he voted for the pay raise.
Yeah, I agree. Well, see, this is why I'm saying I agree with 100% with you that people, they talk, and when time comes to vote, they kind of forget about it. So I'm saying in your particular case where you have that form, and you can, like every day you talk about...
Well, all right, I think you've made your point.
Okay.
I'll think about it. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, Bob.
Let's say hello to Gene on WABC, calling from Huntington, as in Huntington, Long Island, I trust.
Yes. Hi, Bob. Yesterday, a young guy had called. He was in favor of drug legalization, and I believe you disagreed with him. You had said something about how the overall quality of society would go down if drugs were legalized, more people would be using them. Now, when you really think of it, isn't the opposite true, that the overall quality of society would go up? It's like what Herbert Spencer says, if you shield people from their folly, you fill the world with fools.
Let me say something to you. To be a Bob Grant, to have the privilege and the responsibility of doing this type of program has many pluses, but it also has some annoying minuses. One is this subject that you're raising once again here, drug legalization. For at least 25, I can be a fake, a phony, a fraud, and pretend that I agree with you. Then somebody else will call and they will say, yeah, but this and this and this. The bottom line, Gene, is it's just talk. It will never happen. Whether I want it or not, it will never happen. So why waste our time with this academic point, this moot point? It's moot because it'll never happen.
Okay, somehow I got the impression, though, that you were philosophically against it.
Yeah, I am. Yes.
Because it conflicted with your other...
I am philosophically against it because, in spite of what you may think of me, at heart, the trouble with me is I'm an idealist. And ideally, a society does not improve itself by sanctioning the taking of debilitating chemicals.
Are they sanctioning it?
Of course they're saying, when you legalize, what do you think you're doing?
You're saying that it's a vice and you don't approve. Most
No,
people...
it's a sanction. It is a sanction. You are approving, damn it. When you legalize something, you are approving.
There are
You may
plenty of
not you may not be encouraging it.
Right.
But you may not be advertising it, but you are giving it the stamp of approval. Society, in effect, is saying it's okay. We'll say it's okay because we're legalizing it.
Well, we're not saying it's okay.
All right, okay, we'll legalize it. All right, okay, Gene, we're going to legalize it. All right, thank you. Oof, Vanavali. What BBs? They're BBs out there. They are BBs. Oh, CBs. Couillon breakers. Gotta get out of here. I gotta get out, really. Oh, that annoys me. Here's Saul checking in on the line from Freehold, New Jersey. Yes, Saul?
Good afternoon, Bob. I called about one thing, but before I get to that, if I may, I want to comment about two things that you were talking about earlier. One is you were talking about Mayor Dinkins and his protective pigment. Just someone mentioned it to me the other day. Could you imagine if the mayor was Jewish, the anti-Semitism that would come out from all the controversies that he gets himself into, all the trouble he gets into? If he'd be a Jewish person, what a contrast it would be. Not having the protective pigment, and quite the contrary, having the stigma of being Jewish.
Or worse, he could be Italian. What do you think? Jews are the only ones who have scorn heaped upon them?
I think there's more anti-Semitism than anti-Italian.
Well, maybe Jews and Italians have one thing in common, and that is that they're white, and maybe that's the key, that they're white.
That may be. That may be.
I mean, do you think they would criticize Jews if Jews were black?
I think they'd get double criticism.
Okay, all right.
Okay, the next thing I want you were talking about the legalization of drugs being a stamp of approval. I basically feel the same way about abortion. Even though legalizing abortion solves problems, it also is a stamp of approval. And if you don't agree with it personally, then you wouldn't want a stamp of approval on something that disagrees with you, even though it does solve certain amounts of problems.
Well, I think you're comparing apples and oranges. Women have been forced to go to illicit abortion emporia, and thanks to an enlightened age, they didn't have to. They were able to go to hospitals where properly they should be able to go. And all the Supreme Court decision said in 1973 on January 22nd was that they had a right to have an abortion. Now, maybe someday people like you who seem to be obsessed with legalizing drugs, maybe someday the court will say you have a right to get stoned on crack or cocaine or any other mishigas you want to use. Thank you, Sal.
1 second, I really called about Jim Florio.
If you really called about Jim Florio, why did you waste all the time with the cockamamie pigmentation stuff? Why did you have to comment on the legalization of drugs? Why did you have to make that invidious, asinine, puerile comparison, comparing legalizing drugs with legalizing abortion? Why did you have to waste all your time doing that?
You obviously disagree with me, and that's why you're upset. But the reason I stated right as I started...
Well, if you want to talk, Jim, you'll have to wait till after the news and the traffic and the weather. I believe it's Saul who's on the line from Freehold, and Saul never got to his subject because he kept getting sidetracked. Saul?
I'm back.
All right. You wanted to talk about the Flim Flam Man.
Right. Keep on hearing all these wonderful advertisements how we're going to save so much money on our auto insurance because Jim is just great. And I was looking forward to seeing how much I would save. And, it came in the mail, the new policy, on 2 cars, saving a grand total of $136. It looks to me like he is spending public money on promoting himself and his campaign for next run, paying for it with our dollars. I'd much rather him spend those dollars and refunding our tax dollars to us and lowering our taxes rather than spending those money on all that propaganda.
Sal, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's an absolute outrage. I think the people of New Jersey should demand that these announcements stop. I say that even though some of them appear on this radio station. If you noticed, they were within the body of the Bob Grant Show, and because I felt it was such an outrage, they moved them to the adjacent newscast. But what disturbs me is clearly the man is trying to campaign. The man is trying to...
Paid for with our dollars.
Yes, he's paying for it with our dollars, and he's a fraud. He's a fake. He's trying to make people think he's doing something good. He hasn't done anything good. The only good thing he will do is to leave office, and I hope he leaves office at the earliest possible date, which unfortunately won't be until January 1993. But the man must go.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Sal, with people like you, we'll just keep reminding the voting public that the Flim Flam Man must go.
I don't think there's any doubt. Do you think that he stands a chance?
No.
Okay, so.
The only thing he can count on is people's short memory, but we've got to keep that memory going.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yvonne, you're on WABC. Hello.
Hi, Bob. I would like just to talk about my old neighborhood in Bensonhurst. I went to revisit it this weekend after like 20 years, and it hasn't changed at all. It's still really good. And the only thing that's missing is the Walker movie theater. And when I went into Alba's, they didn't have any Panettone Gattori.
They didn't have any Panettone?
Yeah, they didn't have any.
Well, I know Calavita has a Panettone. The Calavita importers or food people out, and it's a Panettone without citrons. I don't like citrons.
Uh-oh. I brought you one a couple months ago, and I left it with Ahmed, the Panettone champagne cake.
Well, were there citrons in that?
I don't know.
Well, I wouldn't know because it has champagne in it, and I don't touch booze in any way, shape, or form. So I haven't eaten the Panettone.
Okay.
So, you see, I don't believe in booze, and I certainly don't approve of it in... why spoil good cake with booze? Tell me that.
I didn't bake it.
Well, I know you didn't.
That's the only one that they had.
Well, it's a very pretty box, Yvonne.
I know. I hope you enjoyed looking at it.
I enjoyed looking at it. I'm still looking at it. Nobody's touched it yet. It's still
really?
in the box.
Come
That's
and
right.
get it. I'm hungry.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
You come down and you can eat it. Here,
Thank
you want to
you.
eat it? Here you are.
Okay.
Okay. Bye. On WABC, it's 4:15. Let's say hello to Anthony. Hello, Anthony.
Bob?
Yes.
Speaking of savage racial attacks, have you heard about the attack in Mount Vernon? 3 pubescent Negroid juveniles beating up one white guy?
When did this attack occur?
About 3 or 4 days ago. And it hasn't been in... I've seen like one report on this blatant attack of violence on the Gannett Westchester newspapers.
I wouldn't have known about it had it not been for a caller phoning the program a couple of days ago and talking about it, but I've seen nothing in the media.
Bob, if it were 3 white youths killing one, they killed him, killing one black man, there'd be loud, screaming headlines suggesting racism.
Absolutely.
Bob, I'm outraged, and the term African American is a euphemism. What they really are a bunch of savage, feral, uncanny beasts. They're all a bunch of sissies.
Sissies? I don't know if they're sissies, but I think Phil is on the line right now. Let's say hello to Phil. He's calling from Port Washington. Hello, Phil.
Hello, Bob. I just want to make 2 comments. On Nightline a couple of weeks ago, William Bennett defending Judge Clarence Thomas and said that he was a free man living in a free country and he could say anything he wants. And it's interesting to note that the liberal Ted Koppel mentioned, on that provocative note, we'll take a break. Now, what's interesting...
That's provocative?
That's what's interesting, because the liberal media cannot resist classifying blacks along ideological lines, and women as well, instead of racial or biological, so that when a black speaks out as an individual, he's branded a traitor to his race. This is the fault of the liberal media, and I thought that was very interesting that Ted Koppel's subconscious came out in that manner.
Well, that's true. Ted Koppel gives himself away. You know, he's so pompous, so arrogant, so officious, so smug. But every now and then the facade is dropped a little bit, and the far left philosophy and bias that he obviously is committed to comes out.
I'd also like to comment on that laughable report on the New York Times that there's a disparity between blacks who make up 11% of the population and only 4% in magazine ads. And the New York Times should call themselves the newspaper of quotas, because they want quotas. I would imagine so. It just doesn't make any sense. Can you imagine an Afro Sheen commercial? 11% blacks advertising Afro Sheen, 82% whites or whatever. And who's going to advertise suntan lotion?
Well, you know, that's all people like Mark Green. That's all. They're obsessed. Mark Green is white, but Mark Green is the epitome of why this country is disintegrating the way it is, because of the white liberals. By the way, as long as we're talking about hypocrisy, I want to point out something. First of all, let me congratulate Louisiana Governor Buddy Roemer, who did not give a mutant murderer a stay of execution. Do you know about this case?
Not at all, Bob.
Get a load of this. This person, this man, 35 years old, he was convicted of raping and murdering an 11-year-old girl in 1984. Now, that's 1984. That's 7 years ago. Being executed 7 years from the time you committed the crime is the earliest anybody's been executed in a long, long time. Usually, they last 10 to 12 years before they're finally executed. Did you know that?
That's very shocking.
Now get a load of this. The person who was executed, Andrew Lee Jones, he's black. He was black. You know what his victim was? His victim was also black. That's why you didn't hear any cry from the NAACP denouncing his execution. You get it?
Got it.
The NAACP, which says that blacks are only executed if their victim is white. Well, his victim was black. The 11-year-old girl that he raped and murdered, she was black. And one of the reasons this story is rather unusual is this guy, Andrew Lee Jones, did not want to be electrocuted. He wanted to have lethal injection. On September 15th, which happens to also be the date of the Bob Grant roast, on September 15th, the state of Louisiana officially goes to lethal injection as the means of execution. So he said, I don't mind being executed, I'd just rather have lethal injection. And Judge Roemer didn't go along with that, and I congratulate him for it.
Okay, Bob, let your light shine, and you have a great program as usual.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you very much. Busy telephones here, the Bob Grant program on WABC from Fort Lee. Here's Carol. Hello, Carol.
Hello, sunshine of my life. You kept me going since 1970.
Wow.
I love you dearly, and I wish you were my son. I don't have one, but I consider you that.
Oh.
I must tell you something. It happened early last evening. I received a phone call. It was a young man's voice, and he sounded so pathetic, and he said, I have a survey. Would you mind terribly? And I said, no, not at all. So I started off with, how do you think President Bush is doing? Good, bad, or excellent? So I said, excellent, of course. So then he brought some Flamforio's name up, and he asked the same questions, and I said, the only adjective I know is that he stinks. So then he continued again with Flamforio's name, and I said, hey, hold on there. You didn't get my name from the phone book, because in the phone book I only have initials. So I realized they got it from the voting books, which he shouldn't be using.
You're right.
All right. So then I said, let's cut it off right here. I have no time for your nonsense.
Good for you,
He's
Carol.
the most hated man in the world. And you can tell him I said so, and I hung up.
Good for you.
Okay? I love you. God bless you.
Oh, thank you, Carol. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. From Queens, here's Joan on the line. Hello, Joan. You're on WABC.
Hello, Bob. I'd like to talk about Elizabeth Kay's premise that the American people consider the Kennedys their royal family. I don't think that's true at all. I speak for myself and those that I know. I think it's the media that foists it on us as the royal family of America. I really don't believe that the American people regard them as such at all. I think that the reason I would read about them is only to see how they wield their power to get themselves out of trouble that they get in. But as far as revering them as a royal family, I really don't feel that's true at all.
I agree with you. I think most Americans maybe at one time may have believed that, may have felt that way, but I don't think they feel that way anymore. I think, if anything, they look upon the Kennedys by and large with scorn. They don't want to say too much about John because he was assassinated, but the fact is John was sneaking broads in the back way to the White House. Not that that makes him a bad guy, but I mean, after all, he's the President of the United States, married man, sneaking women into to the White House so that he can
I don't hold them up at all. And wasn't his father? Didn't he make his millions on bootlegging?
Yes, his father did.
I mean, that's
also, you know, a lot of these left-wing scumbags don't like to admit that the father, Joe Sr., was an admirer of Adolf Hitler.
Really? I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
No, I didn't.
Ah.
How you doing, Bob? I wanted to call you to tell you I really appreciate what you're doing. Between you and Rush, you give me... My day is already done. But you did bring up an issue about these murderers waiting 7 years in order to get executed.
Well, this is the earliest anybody's been executed. The earliest. Usually it's 10 to 12 years.
Okay, now, during that 10 to 12 years, or even that 7 years, our tax dollars are paying for their meals, their room and board, and their little TV that they get to see. Now, when they finally get the turn to get executed, they want a choice. They didn't give their victim a little choice, you know.
Yeah.
They should get executed within 30 days or at least a year in order for our tax dollars to work for something better. Something else that is bothering me. I'm full of this today. I was always brought up, first you take care of the house, then you take care of the yard.
Okay.
Now, I don't understand what Bush is doing. Bush is taking care of the yard first, meaning outside countries instead of ourselves. Right now, I live in the South Bronx, and I have a lot of obstacles to overcome, meaning the homeless when I go outside the door. You know, I see some pregnant ladies asking for money and so on and so on. And they're starving, you know, and Bush gives...
They're starving? What are they doing pregnant?
Well, I don't know. It's first you take care of the house. You find out why they're like that.
That should apply to people, to the people you're talking about, you know. If what the heck are they doing pregnant in the first place? Hey, look, you can't put everything on the president.
Mm-hmm.
What United States congressman, what senator has initiated any legislation which might be the type of legislation you would like to see? I haven't heard of any.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, hello?
Yes, Bob?
Yes.
How are you doing?
Who is this?
This is Lisa Sliwa.
Oh, I didn't recognize you.
You didn't?
You sound different.
Well, I have a little bit of a sore throat.
Oh, that's now I recognize you. To what do I owe this incredible surprise?
Well, Bob, I wish it was under better circumstances. It's a pleasure to be talking to you, as always. But Roy Fredericks had called me up and asked me to give some comments about the St. John's trial. Apparently, all of the defendants, the verdict came down that they were all not guilty of all counts.
Yeah.
And Roy had asked me to make some comments about that, and I'm outraged because I think it's...
Well, aren't you going to make comments on your program tomorrow?
Yeah, but Roy called me.
I didn't know Roy was doing that. I had no idea Roy was doing that. Presumably, then I take it you don't believe the jury came in with the right verdict.
Oh, no, I definitely don't.
Uh-huh.
And I think these type of cases are very difficult. They're difficult for a lot of juries to decide, but for them to come back with absolutely nothing on these guys I think it's a disgrace.
Well, I don't think it's a disgrace because of the discrepancies in the plaintiff's stories. She had tripped herself up with discrepancies. Now, in the beginning, it seemed like a pretty clear-cut case, but as when she took the stand, she undid it with contradictions in her testimony. And you know, Lisa, that because you've watched a lot of courtroom drama, that you watch a jury, and when a person contradicts themselves, immediately there's a shift.
No, it's definitely true, and it's hard, particularly in a case like this where she had so much alcohol in her system. I mean, to recount details specifically, that's always a problem, and you're right. That's something that juries are very leery of.
See, one time she said she had one vodka, and then another time she had 3, and they asked her, well, which is it? You know, first you came on and you said you had 3. Now you're saying you had 1. Which was it? And once the jury has doubt, and you know it does say beyond the shadow of a doubt. I know you felt very strongly about it because I saw you on television commenting about it, and you were understandably very emotional about it, but you know what they always say when a person is acquitted, they come out and they say, well, thank God for the jury system.
Yeah, they do. They definitely do.
But you're going to be so busy, so involved with your network television program. I'm surprised that you even have time to even focus on something as minuscule as this.
No. Well, we focus on a lot of things because, looking at what is happening to women, that's something that I always keep my eyes open for.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
But
Bob,
you're calling from New Haven, are you?
Yeah, New Haven, Connecticut.
Well, maybe that's why you sound different. Yeah, that's why you sound different. So it must be pretty exciting. What do you do? Each night you do a television program up there?
Yeah, Monday through Thursday. Last week and then this week we're doing a show called Street Talk USA, and it's a pilot for ABC. And then in the morning, Curtis does the radio show from the studio there in New York, and then I do it from the hotel here in New Haven.
Does Curtis commute back? Is he commuting from?
Yes.
How does he do that? What time do you do the TV show?
We start taping around 8:15 or 8:30.
And then
night.
he zips back into the city.
Well, he ends up leaving New Haven about 12:30 at night, and then he goes right to the station. He sacks out on the couch there, and he does the show in the morning.
Well, it's a good thing you two are young and in vigorous health.
Well, thank you.
Okay, Lisa, take care.
Mom, take care.
Take care of your throat, Lisa.
I will.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Friends to the whole, everybody's calling about this poor young lady, and I think that
Poor young ladies?
the poor young
Oh, poor.
lady.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I
Okay.
think that everyone is being unfair to her. All right? First of all, it has not been proven that she was not raped.
It has been proven. No,
proven that she was not raped.
what are we supposed to conclude from the verdict?
I mean, if you're going to set the facts,
What are we supposed to conclude from the verdict? What are we supposed to conclude?
Don't try to minimize me.
I minimize? No, I
okay?
can't. I don't like your style. Don't like it. Don't like your style. I gotta like your style, otherwise I'm not gonna continue the conversation. If you get on my nerves, I terminate the conversation. Which means that just about everybody's conversation will be terminated because most people get on my nerves. What am I doing here anyway? I really shouldn't be doing this kind of work. It's the most absurd thing in the world that any broadcasting company would have a guy with my temperament, my lack of patience, my total lack of any compassion to be doing this kind of program. How did I get this job? Phones this time, it's David checking in here. David from Irvington on the Bob Grant Show. Good afternoon, David.
Yes, good afternoon, Bob. I want to congratulate the jury in the St. John's case for being fair-minded, for being patient, and not pandering to a handful of black racists. There were just too many inconsistencies in this particular lady's testimony. Now, Rachel was sincere. I really do believe that she was raped because I can feel the sincerity in her voice. But I think there's a difference between someone like Rachel and someone like, this lady who obviously, you don't get admitted into college, because you can read C. Scott Run.
I see. Yeah, you're right.
And so I think that what it says is that there are juries and what, because I've heard some of these radicals already, and they forget that there were a couple of the jurors were black.
And six of the jury, by the way, they were women. There were 6 women on the jury, 6 men. The judge, by the way, let it be known, is a woman. Just for the record, so that people won't think there was the men all ganged up on the witness. It's not new. We've always debated verdicts ever since this nation came into being. But only recently, in my opinion, have, as a matter of fact, I can't find any evidence to the contrary, only recently have people tried to take to the streets and overturn verdicts, arguing about them. And I understand how some people are outraged. I understand that there are people who feel that the guys should have been convicted. They felt that way from day one. I know of some people who, it was obvious from the very beginning, did not want to hear the testimony, did not want to weigh the evidence. But I always say this, and I've said this even in cases where the verdict came out not to my liking, and that is this. I did not sit in that courtroom day in and day out. I did not weigh the evidence. I did not hear the testimony. I did not look at the witness. I did not look at the defendant. I got it all secondhand, as everybody else did.
Mm-hmm. And the sad part about some of these cases is that, when the story first came out about Tawana Banana, I'm talking about the first couple of days, I think most clear-thinking, decent people of all races felt sorry for her.
Yep, that's true.
But the more the story unfolded, then we began to see what a big fraud that was.
Well, yeah, most people did from the very beginning. I have a tape taken right after November 28th, 1988, which is when I believe she made the charge. And I'm proud of that tape because on it you hear my voice saying, "There's something about this story doesn't ring true. Sorry, folks." And as events played out, not only was the story untrue, it was a scandalous, it was a scurrilous slander against people like Steve Pagonis. I still can't get over the fact they got away with that slander of Steve Pagonis.
Yes, it's incredible.
And I'm not talking about her. I'm talking about C. Vernon Mason, who has the audacity to run for city council president. I'm talking about another jerk, Alton Maddox, and of course the buffoon of buffoons, the potentate of ridiculousness, the one and only your good pal.
Yeah, Al Sharpton.
Right you are. That's it. Thank you very much, sir, David. Thank you. Okay.
Hey, folks, you probably know what a roast is, right? That's an occasion when people get together to pay tribute to somebody. But instead of everybody saying a bunch of nice, gooey things, what they do is have a lot of fun creaming the guy. Come up with a whole bunch of characteristics and traits that are not good about the guy. In essence, tell the person off. Well, let me tell you, I make a lot of personal appearances, and I love a live audience, but I've never roasted anybody before. I'm a nice guy. I don't like trashing people. However, At the Mayfair Farms in West Orange, New Jersey, the victim of our roast will be Bob Grant. And I, Rush Limbaugh, hope you'll join me and a whole bunch of celebrities on September 15th.
Paul, you're on WABC. Hello.
Hey, Bob, I'm a first-time caller, and I can understand some of your frustrations with the callers because I do a radio program myself on WFUV on the FM there. I want to talk a little bit about the St. John's thing and something that most of the callers really haven't talked about yet, and why David Dinkins is getting involved and releasing statements about it. Here's a woman who had a gripe, who had a problem, and she presented it, and the law dealt with it, and these people were acquitted. Why is David Dinkins issuing statements saying that he's shocked and dismayed that they were acquitted? I don't understand that at all.
Well, what David Dinkins is telling you is that he is such an amateur when it comes to being he's such an amateur that he's saying he had already made up his mind that these guys were guilty. And even though he was not in the courtroom even for 1 minute during the proceedings over the several months that the trial went on, he had decided that they were guilty way back then, and that's why he's shocked, because he had determined that they were guilty. He probably had determined that they were guilty because the victim was black and the defendants were white, and David Dinkins is a racist.
Yeah, that's what I thought, too.
Yeah.
One other thing I'd like to talk about is where were people like this Liz and other people who have called into your show today? They're saying, we should have sympathy for this victim now, alleged victim anyway, and we don't want to hurt her feelings. Hey, where were they whenever these guys were being accused of rape?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you put it all in perspective, and I thank you very much, Paul.
All right, bye, Bob.
Paul from Oradell right now.
What?
They've been found not guilty.
No.
I know that we had a guy on the line who doesn't like the word innocent, but they are innocent in the eyes of the law. So there's nothing for them to do. What are to sue about? What?
Well, their name has been tarnished now.
Well,
and so
hey, but you forget this. Hey, you dummy! You dummy! They've been acquitted, you dummy!
You're the dummy.
Get off my phone. I despise you.